Well, we can probably get all of it in today, maybe.
Yeah, I think so. Let me see. Why am I not? Today is July 19th, 2018. We're in the home of Mr. Frank Lizarraga in La Victoria, city of Tempe, Arizona. Mr. Lizarraga, could you start out by telling us your full name, when and where you were born?
Yes, of course. My name is Frank Garcia Lizarraga, born of Rafael Lizarraga and Catalina Garcia, born in Tucson in 1923. Supposedly, I was born in the ranch at that time with a midwife because I was not registered. This I found out when I went to get a birth certificate. There was none. So I had made one, they made me one, a certificate of non-certificate. Nevertheless, I'm an American citizen. So it so happened that my father sold his ranch, and he had a gold claim there in Las Guijas area. He sold that too, and came into town to suffer the consequences of the Depression. At that time, the Depression was all over the United States. We suffered a lot because Tucson is not an industrial city, it's not a farmland city. And we suffered quite a bit of hunger and other lot of things because there was no work, no wages, no farming, no nothing. President Hoover at the time was a president, and he didn't do very much for the citizens. So it happened that after my parents died, I was left alone with my sister, which had about 6 or 7 children and nothing to eat. It happened that my sister, Ernestina or Tina, eloped with Manuel Esquer. And so she took me with the family, the Esquer family. I was 11 years old at the time. I lived with them for about 7 years, I think. And the area where I went to was called Midvale Farms. It was a little ranch type of feeding cattle for the market, a stock feeder or whatever they call them. And I went there. I went to school there till the 7th grade. And one day I had to go work, and it was picking cotton, and the supervisor, the superintendent of the farm found me out there picking cotton, and he said, "Why don't you go to school?" And I said, "Well, sir," I said, "I have to work because I have no parents. I'm an orphan." "Oh," he said, "You're okay." "Well," he says, "I'll give you a job." So he put me to take care of a flock of sheep. It was about 40 or 50 head of sheep that I had to take out every morning out to graze in different areas. So after that, I grew up some, and I decided to go to town and stay with my brother, Jesus, which is deceased, and he was working at the Pioneer Hotel in the vegetable department, and I got a job there as a busboy.
What year was this?
Around 1937 or 38.
So you were orphaned at age 11?
Pardon?
You were orphaned at age 11?
Yes, I was orphaned at age, completely orphaned at age 11, 10, not quite 11.
Did you ever have to live by yourself?
Yes, after my parents died, like I said, the depression was terrible. We had a home, but there at the house, my brothers had their own place to live, and I was by myself in the house there. I didn't eat for a couple of days, and so all I had was a 50-cent shirt and no shoes. It was really in a poverty basis, very, very bad. So my sister picked me up and took me to this far place with the Esquer family, and I kind of survived there, and I'm very grateful to that family because I grew up with them and I had something to eat. There was a lot of corn, especially. They used to farm a lot of corn for the cattle. They used to make ensilage out of the corn, but there was a lot of corn to eat. And then the farm is different in town. There's a lot of vegetables, and there's a lot of weeds that are edible in the field that we could eat. And then the lady, the manager's wife, would raise turkeys and hens, and we used to have eggs, buy eggs from her, and we had plenty to eat there at that place.
Well, let me go back a little bit. When you were living by yourself, did you go to school?
Oh yes, when I was by myself, I started school, Ochoa School. At that time, it was kind of a school, kind of a segregated for the Mexican people, Latin people. The area where I lived was a barrio. A barrio is like a little community. They called the Barrio Libre, among the worst ones. And at those times, liquor was prohibited, but still there was a lot of bootlegging and a lot of drunks at those times. So I was by myself there and in the house, and I managed to survive. I can't hardly believe that myself, but I used to eat off the streets like banana peelings, orange peelings. I used to go behind the Chinese stores and in the garbage that they would burn the oranges and bananas. I'd take them out of there and eat them for survival. And maybe that's the reason I have such good immunity in my stomach. And
so you were 11 at that time.
Huh?
You were 11, huh? So
No, I wasn't 10 yet.
you weren't even 10?
10. I turned 11 in May when I was taken to the farm. There I turned 11 years.
Your first experience at Ochoa School, how did that happen?
Well, Ochoa School was, like I said, kind of a segregated school for the Latin people, or Mexican people, they called us. We were not Mexicans, we were Americans, born here, but still they considered us Mexicans. So, you want me to bring the detail about my whipping?
Sure.
It happened, this incident, that I had only a 50-cent shirt from Crest store, which was at that time popular there in town. And that shirt only cost 50 cents. One of my sisters bought it for me, and I wore, that's about all I had, pants and a shirt. But I had no shoes, and I used to run around without shoes among the bullhead, and I had my feet were about half an inch thick, like leather soles, and I used to run over those bullheads and hills like a dog or like a pig or like an animal, and the stickers wouldn't hurt me. So it happened that it went on for days, and then one day my sister Della, who lived about 3 miles away from me on 22nd Street and 7th Avenue, she says, come over here, she says, in the morning, brother, and I'll wash the shirt for you. At that time, that we had no running water in the house. We had no running water, toilets or nothing. In the 30s, it was something with outhouses. So I said, okay, I'll be there in the morning. So I walked over there in the morning, and I took my shirt off. I took my shirt off, left my pants only on, and no shoes. And she says, go to the front and get me a pail of water to wash the shirt. So the only water that was in that house was out in front of the house. It's a spigot, a water spigot. So I went over there, and as I had the bucket full of half of water, it happened that a truant offer by the name of Joe Taylor. He was a short, stocky, blue-eyed guy that was kind of mean, sort of. So when he saw me, he rode up to me and said, boy, what's your name? And I said, my name is Frank Lizarraga. He said, oh yes, he said, you are supposed to be in school and you dished out. I said, sir, I said, the reason is my sister's going to wash my shirt for me. And no, he says, get in here, don't worry about the shirt. I said, well, just let me tell her that you're going to take me to school. Okay, so I went back and told my sister, the truant officer picked me up and he's going to take me to the school. And I had no shirt or nothing, so I got without a shirt. I got in the car and he took me to Ochoa School. At that time, Mrs. Ballfinch was the supervisor of the school. My teacher was Mrs. Rosenfeld. Mrs. Ballfinch, the superintendent, was a tall lady, and when Mr. Taylor took me in there, he asked Mrs. Ballfinch, how many swats shall I give him? And they had a paddle that they used to paddle kids with, the rubber. It was wrapped with the rubber with holes in it. And she looked at me and without a shirt and everything, and I think maybe she had a little bit of compassion. She says, no, don't swat him, just take him to his classroom. So Mr. Taylor takes me to Mrs. Rosenfeld. The school is built like a U to the back, and it has 2 verandas or porches, say, with rails. And so each room has its own door, or own room, and there's a latrine or, say, a bathroom for the boys and the girls. So Mrs. Rosenfeld had a little talk with Taylor and Mr. Taylor, and after he left me, why, she grabbed me by the arm and pulled me into the bathroom and just slapped my face about 20 times. Both hands, she just slapped my face about 20 times. And I just stood there, scaredless. I'm scared. And then after that, my face was just flaming red, and I didn't cry. She pulled me over to my room and set me in a chair, and everybody was looking at me. My face was just flaming red and hurt, but I never cried. So that incident is kind of to forget, because that's an abuse of Mrs. Rosenfeld. However, I called it an abuse because I didn't do anything wrong. I missed school because I had no clothing. And so that was a reason for not missing school. So, nevertheless, after that, by myself there at the house, my sister, like I say, picked me up and took me to this ranch area where the Esquer family lived, and there's about 6 or 8 of those people living in a 2-3 room adobe house. No water, no running water, no nothing. We had a cart with a tub that we used to go about a quarter of a mile. There was a pump and a well that was put in there by who knows. And we used to pump water out of there to drink. We used to load up our tub full of water, put a linen cloth over the top, and take the cart down to the house. There was a barrel there what we filled up. That's where the family used to drink water from and cook. Now that well that was there was a pump, a hand pump, the old-fashioned hand pump. And the top of it was covered with railroad ties, so nobody could fall in there, but it had cracks. And everything fell in there, snakes, cockroaches, lizards, you name it. Everything fell in there would be in the well. And sometimes when we pumped the water out, there'd be parts of a grasshopper or parts of a frog or parts of lizards. But we drank that water without nothing, like it was good, clear water. Mm-hmm. Well, it's a wonder that I didn't get sick, but there were some children that did have dysentery, different kinds of diseases. But luckily, I never came up with anything.
So you were living outside the city of Tucson at that time?
The farm is about 10 miles south of the town. And that's in the San Javier Mission area. And the farm consisted, I would say, of about, I would say maybe 2 miles square. And we had a blacksmith by the name of Jeronimo Maldonado. He was a blacksmith in the shop. And so it was a living area there. It was very nice because the manager's wife would raise turkeys and chickens. And so there was a lot of, she would sell eggs to us and all that, so we had something to eat.
So how long were you out there?
Huh?
How long did you live there?
I left there when I was 17 years old. I left there and went with my brother Jesus in Tucson. He lived in around Ahoway, which is now Ahoway, and that's about in 12th Avenue. And I stayed with him for a year, and then I moved over with another brother, Eleazar. He had a wife and 1 child. And from there, I went to work at the Pioneer Hotel as a busboy. And at that time, I bought a 1930 Model B Ford in town that I bought, and I rode it. That's the first automobile I had.
Let me ask you a question of what Tucson was like in the 30s, as far as you remember.
Tucson in the old times was like an old western town, as you can see in the movies nowadays. Main Street was a street that was a dirt road all the way from the middle of town, past the middle of town, east, north, and south. And around Congress, where the big business is now, there used to be a stable And most people would come in with horse wagons from different communities, like Tanque Verde was one, Barrio Anita. From different areas, they would come down, and they would in a wagon, of course, and the stableman would take care of the horses while they went shopping, buying food or whatever they were to do. And there's where the interesting thing to me was interest, because for the first time I saw that the wagons had wood spokes, and they had to be put in water so they would tighten up. It was like a little half-moon vat that they would raise up the wheel and put that under and turn a wheel, and would get all the spokes wet and tight to keep it from rattling. And so that's the way it was in those times. It was a very western town, very western.
And the neighborhoods around there, what did they look like? The neighborhoods, the barrios, how did they look?
The what?
The barrios around there, how did they look? The neighborhoods.
The neighbors?
Yeah, the neighborhoods. What was it looking like?
The communities?
Yeah.
Well, they were sort of very poorly, like ranchers, actually. People in ranches all they wore was Levi's, which was already in effect. They were already in the market. They dressed more like cowboy style, most people. And the ladies, they always went with long skirts and things like those.
Mm-hmm. And the houses?
I was too young at those times to know any people from those areas, you know.
So, you went to school up to the 7th grade. Where did you go to school after Ochoa?
After that Ochoa school, and my sister picked me up, I went to Los Reales at Midvale Farms. There was a little country school that was one teacher from grade 1 till 7. And when I got there, I was in the 5th grade. So I was there, and when I was in the 7th grade, I had to leave the school because I had no parents to take care of me, so I had to go to work. And very shortly, I moved into town, and that's where I started with working for the Pioneer Hotel.
What was that like?
Eh?
What was that like?
Everywhere I went, there was a lot of discrimination at that time. So I worked at the Pioneer Hotel in the parlor section, which is the 2nd floor. And an incident happened at one time where I was not a boss boy then, but then I was a waiter. I would wait on tables and help the lady waiter. And so we had a head waiter, Mr. Roberts. He was a head waiter that was taking care of everything. So it was a rule that if I helped on a party, I would and serve, I would get half of the tip that was left, because that's what we worked on, tips. And the hotel paid us $30 a month plus the food, which was good at that time. And this particular time, the Steinfeld family were the owners of the Pioneer Hotel, and they were having a big feast on the varsity room. And Alex, my waiter, my head waiter, not Mr. Roberts, but he says, you're going to be helping Georgia, a lady by the name of Georgia, which was brought in from the dining room downstairs. She was a very good waitress, and she was always brought up for special parties like the Steinfields especially. They were the owners of the hotel. The varsity room, it consisted of about maybe 20 people. And so the party went on and we served it. And so whenever they paid, they had a check. And she would present the check to whoever was in charge of the party. And they would sign it and put on the tip on there. So when she got the very secretly she got the bill and was signed. She rushed downstairs, and downstairs she had to turn in and cash the check, turn it in and get the tip. And Jimmy, a Filipino man, worked there. He was the one that was in the cashier department there. So when I followed Georgia downstairs, she had already been there and had cashed the check or taken the tip. And so I went upstairs and I met Georgia walking down the hall between the parlors. And I said, Georgia, I said, I want half of that tip. And she looked at me and she said, you're not getting anything. I said, I'm supposed to get half of what you got. I think she got $10 that day for the tip. So she pulled out $1 out of her pocket and she says, all you're getting is $1, you Mexican son of a bitch. When she said that, I couldn't help it. I opened up and I hit her with my fist and knocked her down. I knocked her on her back, and she picked up and started hollering and running, and she ran downstairs and got Mr. Roberts. So Mr. Roberts came up and he says, Frank, I understand you hit this lady. I said, yes, I did. Why did you hit her? Because he called me, he gave me my $1 tip that that's all I was getting, and called me a dirty Mexican, which I'm not a Mexican and I wasn't dirty. So that's the reason I hit her. So he kind of reasoned and he said, well, he says, Frank, he says, it's against the law to hit a woman, you know. So you're in trouble, so what I'll do, you go home for a week or so till everything settles down. So I did. That irked me very much when she called me that, you know. I couldn't take that. Mm-hmm. After all the discrimination there was, and then calling me in the face like that. Mm-hmm. But nevertheless, I left the hotel because the Esquer family moved to Tempe to work here in the farms. And when they left, I followed them here. That's how come I got back here in Tempe. I followed the family over here and I found them here. At that time, they came and settled in Baseline and McClintock, which was a farm run by B&M Farms, Brown and Marley. That was the name of the farm. And they were working there, and I got a job there too.
That was the Marley farm, huh?
Huh?
Marley?
Yeah, it's a farm.
Kemper Marley?
Huh?
Kemper Marley?
What?
The owner of the farm.
The owner of the farm?
Yeah.
Brown.
Brown?
Don Brown and Marley. Marley was actually involved in the liquor business, which brought a murder of John Bowles in Phoenix.
Kemper Marley.
Kemper Marley, yes. And it's surprising what things happen, because now I had a job here 2 or 3 years ago, right next to the Hotel Clarendon, where John Bowles was bombed. They killed him by a ring of business people, I guess, Kemper Marley and some other associates. Maybe you heard about that.
Oh yes, I've heard a lot about it.
Yeah.
Let me ask you one thing. You mentioned the discrimination. We went all through your early life, but you didn't mention much about discrimination until you got to the hotel. And when you were slapped by that teacher. So how bad was discrimination in Tucson when you were growing up? How was it in school?
Well, to begin with, in the Ochoa school was only 11 people, Spanish-speaking people. We're Americans, but we are of the Mexican heritage. We're Spanish. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of discriminations towards us, especially the city of Tucson. They didn't give us any running water. They called it the South Tucson. That was actually from about 29th Street to maybe 36th Street, somewhere in that area. It's a matter of maybe, well, most of the people that lived in that area there were called a Barrio Libre. They called that community El Barrio, or a community. And we had I remember back again to the old times, we had a riot. We had a riot of the Mexican people against the white people on 6th Avenue from 29th Avenue to 36th Street and 6th Avenue, the Nogales Highway. We had a racial fight, the white people and the Mexican people. And we had clashes with irons, with poles, with whatever we could get. People would start hitting each other, you know. And so that was a very bad thing at those times. And therefore the city of Tucson classified the Barrio Libre like not a reservation, but at the same time they wouldn't do nothing for us. No water, no running water, no toilets, no nothing. No lighting. We had oil lamps. So most of the people in town, they had the commodities, or they had the utilities, at least drinking water, but they never supplied us with drinking water. We used to drink water from wells that we dug. Our people dug around the community.
So what caused this fight in the first place?
Well, I don't know what caused it, but ever since I can remember, there has been a dislike of the white Anglo people and the Mexican people. I suppose it derived from the Alamo, where the Mexican people were overtaken by Texas or the Southerners or whoever was there. But the Mexican people were looked down like, almost like the black. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Tucson had a lot of discrimination at that time.
Oh, very much more, yeah. And then now, even now, in later years, they developed somewhere or another. They made the South Tucson, the city of the South Tucson, to manage themselves, their own council and their own judges and their own police force especially. They had their own police, South Tucson police, which was not necessary, but it was something they didn't want to do nothing with.
Now, you mentioned you followed the Esquer family to Tempe. Why?
Well, the main reason was that one of the girls, Mary, happened to be my sweetheart. We fell in love, and so we never got married till they moved over here, and I followed them over here, and I stayed in Tempe for a bit, but then I went to West Phoenix, to Tolleson with my brother. I had a brother there, and I lived with him, and I would come over in my car and visit her. And then at one time, we used to work in the lettuce fields, and we would earn $2 a day for 10 hours work. And so $2 a day. Then when I was there, I heard about the mine in Superior, that they needed workers for the foundry. So there was three of us that we went over there of the Escares. Two Escares and me went to Superior, Arizona to work in the mines. Not in the mine, but on a foundry. And during that time that I was working there, I picked up a little money and I sold my car, and I married my wife Mary. I bought her a wedding dress, and but I had to sell my car to get $200. But we got married. It was a kind of incredible. We got married on Baseline and McClintock, and there in that place where the lakes are a very famous place there, the lakes. There were no lakes at the time. It was all lettuce fields. But due to the canals that we have, the canal system that we have here, the developers developed a place there they call the lakes. And most people that come here, the lakes, they think it's been there all the time, but it's not. It was built. It's a man-made lake. So it's kind of historic that we were married there at the lakes.
Before it was the lakes.
Before the lakes.
So you were married when? 1941, 1942?
What happened was, yes, I was married. I was married 1 year, and working in Superior at the time. We used to work in the concentrate bins, which hold a lot of ore, and we used to work in those rooms where we had the ore, and we had to supply. We had at the bottom, we had an opening where we had to keep on with a hook, pull down the ore that was in the room little by little. And underneath there was a conveyor. The conveyor would take this ore to another conveyor that would convey it up to the smelter, where they would melt the ore. Once in a while, we would have an accident, and too much ore would come at once and pile up in the opening and stop the motor, because it would plug up the conveyor belt. And so somebody had to go to the front while we pulled on the conveyor belt and get the motor started again. And at that time we had a foreman which was very mean. He came from Mexico, from a mine place that the Cananea. He had been working in Cananea, Mexico, in the mines, and he was in charge of that particular place where I was working. So one day he said, if I catch whoever I catch running that motor again, starting that conveyor motor again, I'm going to have him fired. So nobody wanted to go, because whoever went was going to be fired. Now, we were not thinking about the deferment, because actually we were deferred from the Army. We had a deferment working in the mine. And so we decided that if he would fire, somebody had to go start the motor while the other was stuck on the conveyor. So whoever was there, whoever he takes down, we all go. And there were 7 of us. So it did happen again, and so the boss came over and took this kid, and he's going to fire him. So we followed him, and he looked back and said, "Where are you guys going?" He said, "We're going to go all. You fire one, you fire all." "Oh," I said, "That's good. I'll fire all of you." So he did. He fired us, and he said, "It won't be long till you'll be contacted by Uncle Sam, because we had a deferment." Well, it was too late anyway. That's how come I was in the Army. I was at home about a month later. I got a note: "Present yourself to Florence for inductment into the Army." And Florence, Arizona was the center for the Army at that time for inductions.
Well, let me ask you this question then. How did you find out about Pearl Harbor, and where were you?
About what?
Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor.
Pearl Harbor?
Yeah.
That was in 1941, I think, if I can remember right. I was still working in a hotel, and there was a lot of newspapers hollering, "Extra, extra, extra, hear all about it, hear all about it, you know, Japan strikes Pearl Harbor." That's how I heard it. That was the first time I heard about Pearl Harbor.
And what did you think?
Well, at that time, we were already in war with Germany. And it was a kind of a sad feeling, because Japan was another enemy. Mm-hmm. And so they were pretty powerful. There was what we called at that time the what do they call them? The Nazis and the Japs. There are 4 powers. They had a name for them. I forget the name. But nevertheless, it consisted of Russia. Russia at that time was on Hitler's side. Russia, Germany, Italy, and Japan. The Axis. Mm-hmm. That was it. They called them the Axis. And so those are the 4 countries that the United States and England were fighting, mm-hmm. plus the Allies.
So what did you think when you were drafted?
I didn't feel much. I didn't feel too bad. I was married when they drafted me, and I had 1 child. And that was kind of a sad situation, because that's a separation in the first year of marriage. But I had an option of going to the Army, or serving or being in a stockade somewhere. And that's one thing that I have never been in jail, in a stockade. And I said to myself, I've never been in a stockade or in jail, and I won't be. I'd rather go to the Army. And I did. I left the family, I left my wife and a child, and went to the Army. Yeah.
Where did you go?
The first place I went to was San Pedro, California, by bus, and then from there we were, they get you ready there, they give you a crew cut, they cut your hair off and give you some uniforms. The uniforms are either too small or too large or too small. So then from there on they would ship us to Camp Roberts, California, which I went there for 6 months training, and all the training that we had there was for overseas for the Japanese, towards the Japanese in the South Pacific. But for some reason, which I don't know why, I was plucked out of the platoon and out of the regiment and sent to Fort Benning, Georgia. I was the only one there that I know of who went to Fort Benning, Georgia. So I did. I went to Fort Benning, Georgia, and at that time it was a secret. It was secret. Everything was secret because the enemy had ears everywhere. I didn't know where I was going or what I was going to do, but I went to Fort Benning, and they, even in Fort Benning, they didn't know what was going on. They knew about a place they called Sand Hill, which was right behind the headquarters for the airborne. And so they told me to take a bus that said Sand Hill, and I got on that bus and took me down to Sand Hill where the division was forming. See, they were putting together the 71st Division. So I went there and I joined the 71st Division there.
Well, what was it like being of Mexican descent, and what was Georgia like?
What?
Being of Mexican descent, what was Georgia like?
Well, it was really, really something else that I seen discrimination against the Latin people here, but nevertheless, the black was worse yet. The first time I had a chance to go to Columbus, which is a little town there close to Fort Benning, and it was a Saturday morning, and I went to the main place, and they told me in front there'd be a bus there taking us to Columbus. So I went over there, and when I got to the bus, it was kind of a long bus, and there was a conductor up at the front end of it, and then I noticed that there's two doors to the bus, one in front and one in back, and I noticed both black people were in the back and the white people in the front. So I asked myself a question: where do I fit? Since I'm not black and I'm not Anglo, I says, do they have a special place up on top somewhere for me or what? So as I stood there kind of amazed, the conductor waved me, come on over with the white people. So I sat with the white people. But it was kind of embarrassing. For me, it was something that I had never seen before. Arizona was mostly Latin people. We didn't have very many black people here. We didn't have that, like they had it in Georgia and in the southern states. We have now, but we didn't at that time. So that was quite an incident to see those, and also as all the stores that were in the town, there was no black people. They had a place of their own set up for somewhere in the back somewhere for buying things, mostly secondhand stuff, and they couldn't go in a restaurant with the people, so they had to have their own way of being there. I don't know how they got along, but they did.
So where did you go? Well, how was your relationship with other soldiers?
My relationship with the soldiers? Well, the Army at that time, we didn't have any black people in the infantry. For some reason or another, the black people, they were fighting. I didn't see any troops, any black troops. I saw some tankers in tanks. In fact, we were supported by a tank regiment, but they're all black. And they worked a lot on quartermaster. The quartermaster corps was full of black people and tankers. But I never ran across any infantry or artillery that I seen where the black people. They might have been, I don't know.
Did you meet very many Latin people in the Army?
What?
Did you meet very many Latin people, Latinos in the Army?
Did I know any?
Yeah.
No, I didn't. I have been among them because we had a little incident there when we went into Germany. When we were in Germany, the tank commander, we were going to go. They're going to Spearhead, and they wanted a soldier to be on the turret to protect them from being hit by German bazookas, because the German bazooka is a very poorly designed weapon, and it loads through the front, and it has a big heavy projectile in the front where the tail end, which is the firing device, the explosive device, goes into the shaft, but when it goes out, it wobbles. It has no straight trajectory; it just wobbles, and so they have to be. The German bazooka man has to be within about 15-20 feet away from the tank to hit the track. And their aim is to hit the track of the tank to disable it. Once it's disabled, the artillery and the plane will kill him. So I was one of the poor guys that was put on this. I was a very lucky person to be put on one of these tanks, up on top of the turret like a chicken, to shoot, to kill the German before he would fire his bazooka. And it was quite an experience. I wasn't afraid of it, but I knew that I was going to get hit by somebody. But something happened. We went. There was 3 tanks, and one after another. I was in the first one. And we went into a valley area there. I don't recall the name of the place, but it so happened there was a swamp, and the tanks being was so heavy they sunk. They got stuck in the swamp. They couldn't go. And that was the end of that story. I didn't kill anybody, or I didn't get killed. But during that time, that the tanks were stuck down there, the higher brass, as in the Army, the higher brass, no matter who he is it. He is the commander. And at that time, we had a second lieutenant, black man, that was a high top brass. So he was the commander of us, the few infantry guys that were in, and the blacks. So he said, let's go down. There was 2 farms there, 2 houses, which were farmers, and the commander says, let's leave the area here before we get hit, and go to those farms and we'll stay there. So we did. Now I didn't have but a light pack. I had nothing to sleep on. I had rations in my backpack. So when we got to the ranch there, the commander ran the people out of there. There was a young man of about 30-something years old with his wife and 3 kids, and he told her to get out, get out. And the man cried, no, please don't. And he says, he put a 45, he says, move, go. The black guy put out a 45 on this German, and he says, move, go to the other place, go away from here. Go to the other house, wherever you want to, but you have to leave the house. It was kind of a sad picture because, well, in the war, it's common. People have to leave their homes and families or whatever. So we stayed there, and it happened that's the only time that I've been associated or close to black people. The commander says, well, you guys don't have any blankets, so you're going to have to use some of the blankets. Trade at night with shift, sleeping and guarding, and so we used to sleep in the blankets. There was one guy there from Kentucky or from somewhere south. He said, I'll be damned if I'm going to sleep in one of those cool blankets. I said, well, I don't care whose blanket it is. If I get cold, I'm going to get in it. That was quite an experience.
So what was your main function when you were in the Army, aside from that one time that you were with the tankers? What was your job?
Oh, my job was, I was a mortar, 81 millimeter mortar crewman. And that consists about 7 persons. So we have the first gunner, the second gunner, and the third. We have 3 gunners, and to manage with the mortar. And we are ammunition bearers. We have a vest with 3 projectiles in front and 3 projectiles in back, besides our pack and our rifle. So the mortar crewman, it's quite astonishing. It's really very interesting thing. I'm looking at your camera. It's something like a camera. that actually, the mortar has a base, and the cannon sits on that base with a knob like a joint. The base has a socket-like thing, and the cannon has a ball that fits in there. And inside of the cannon, it has a prong, like a steel prong. When the projectile is dropped into the mortar tube, it goes in and it hits a charge and it blows it out. And when it blows out, it is already scheduled to go, say, 300 yards or 400 yards. And the number 1 gunner is setting up like a tripod like your camera. He's looking at that, and he's got windage and yardage to the front, which way or which way. We don't see the enemy. We have mostly an officer, mostly a lieutenant, that's the observer. And he has to be in a place where snipers don't see him or machine gunners don't see him. So he is up in somewhere where he can spy or see some enemy, say a machine gun or another mortar or a truck or something on the other side. When he sees a target, he calls in and he says, drop me a white phosphorus shell, and say, and drop it in 500 yards, and the placement is on 0. So the first projectile goes out, and when it hits, the white phosphorus comes up like smoke, and that's a signal where it is. It's a marker at the same time, and at the same time it burns people. If it gets you, if it hits on your clothing, you burn up, you burn. So the white phosphorus is the first shell, and the observer is looking at it, and he determines how far did it come as close to the enemy. Say he went about 200 yards to the right, and it's got to go further up about, say, another 300 yards. So he radios or he telephones. At that time we had telephones, no radio. We had to put a line of telephone to the observer. He telephones down to the crew and to add so many miles to the right and so many miles to the forward. So at the end of those little projectiles, at the end of the projectile, there's the fin like a rocket. We have plastic, little square plastics about, say, 1.5 inches square, with a little wire, and we attach one of those for every 100 yards. So if you got to hit 300 yards, we will wire 3 of those little patches on the back or the bottom of the projectile, and that boosts the firing, the projector further. And so the second shot, that's the way it's done. maybe the third time, at the third projectile, he hits the target. And when he hits the target, all we hear is target completed. And then he looks for another one.
So tell me, you went training to Fort Benning, and then you went overseas.
Yeah.
Where did you land?
We landed in England first. We landed in the at the Isle of Wight. We didn't get off the boat. So we went there, and we were immediately from there, from England. We waited till the word was set off, and we were shipped to France. What's the name of the? I can't think of the name of that. Right close to Paris, Normandy. From the boat, we were put on, the day we went to France, we were put on landing LSTs, what they call the landing boats, rafts. And they don't go, they can't, there's no harbor there, so they put us off the boat into those landing crafts, and they drop us off about 10 feet away from the edge there, the water. We had to wade in the water to walk out of there. And from there, they took us into trucks. They picked us up on trucks and took us to a place where we built old Camp Gold. We built that camp. It was nothing but mud and radish. It was a radish field, mud up to your ankles. And we built this camp, and we pitched up our own tents, and we stayed there for about a month or two, I think.
When was this? What was the month and year?
Huh?
When was this? What year?
What year? That was in 44, I think. We were there. I'm trying to think of the name of the harbor there. But anyway.
Cherbourg or something like that?
Huh?
Cherbourg, Calais?
Can't think of the name of it. Can't think of the name of the harbor. But nevertheless, we were in France. And there were a lot of, there where we landed, where we were at, there was a lot of pads, concrete pads where the Germans had those buzz bombs shooting over to England. You heard about them? Buzz bombs. They were shooting before we got there, because we pushed them out of there. Yeah.
And then from there, where did you go from there after you established your camp?
Well, we stayed there at the camp, and when they got the orders to push, before the orders to push, they moved us from Camp Old Gold to the front lines, which the front line was in Alsace-Lorraine, a place they called Bitche or something like Bitche, B-I-T-C-H-E. It was in Alsace-Lorraine. I think Nancy is another town there. That's where they put us in the front lines. We relieved the, I think it was, I'm not sure, but I think it was the 81st Infantry Division. We relieved them, they came back, and we took over. But it was done very secretly and very slow, because going in there to the front lines and out, it's only one little trail, and it's mined all around. So it's muddy, and so the way we did it, or the way they did it, so that the Germans would not notice that we were moving a new division in there. They would take in a jeep 4 guys in and bring 4 guys out. You know, they didn't move a bunch of people, no. Little by little, little by little, little by little. That was to keep it sort of quiet so that they would not know that there was a new division. Because knowing that there was new division, they would probably make an attack. And we weren't ready for it yet. So that's the way they did it. And the enemy was, there's a valley there. We were on one side of the valley, the German was on the other side of the valley. And you could see them, they could see us too. But we wouldn't shoot at them like that, but they were, well, you could see them shaving or something, you know, ease off. And I could see them. It was not at that time a shooting time. All we were getting was artillery shells, artillery barrages. And for our side also, they were artillery barrages and one bomb here or there. So it was kind of quiet there till the word was for the big push. There was a big push, they called it, and we loaded. We went into they loaded us up on trucks and went into across the Rhine on a pontoon bridge. They crossed us. We crossed the Rhine on a pontoon bridge, truck after truck.
So this was what, January 1945?
It was around it was around March.
March 1945.
In South Tavi, in that area. Yeah. Can we stop a minute?
Sure. Let's get back to the push. You crossed the Rhine on pontoon bridge, and imagine you just kept going.
Yeah.
Where did you go to?
Well, once we crossed the Rhine, we never hardly stopped, except for when we got into Frankfurt, and we used to sleep on our pup tents when we had to stop and continue. But we never hardly had say that we stayed very long, because we were after this division that was retreating, and that's the time when we crossed the Siegfried line. I saw all those dragon teeth, what they call the dragon teeth, and General Patton, he was the commander of the Third Army. He ordered some bulldozers, and they buried it with dirt. You know, it made a bridge with dirt. We went over it like a dirt bridge, like a dirt mound. So we went through there, taking places and taking towns, and they kept retreating, and we kept on going forward after them. And there was incidents there where we were close to getting killed. We were always under fire, artillery fire and machine gun fire. So one day as we were advancing, the German army, the German soldiers, they were shooting artillery shells at us with time fire, and that's very deadly, because the projectiles will explode, say, 15, 20 feet above you. And they explode up there. Instead of hitting the ground, they explode on the air, and it spreads all that shrapnel around, like killing flies. So when I saw that happening, I just crouched to the ground. There's no place to hide, just on bare ground. I just huddled myself there and covered my head. And I could feel shrapnel buzz through me, very close to me, within 3 or 4 feet away from me. Pieces of metal, you know. But they never hit me. I didn't get hit by shrapnel. Several people got hit. Several soldiers got hit in the face and arms and places. But I was very lucky. I wasn't touched by a bullet or shrapnel or anything. And another time, as we were advancing, we were told to get into this big, it must have been an artillery dugout, because it had a ramp. It was a hole about 12 by 12, I would say 12 by 12 or a little bigger, and they had a ramp. It's all dirt. They had a ramp going down there. So it was probably an artillery gun or something in there. But we took it to set our mortar in there, and we did. Well, we fired from there. We were there for about 2 or 3 days, shooting from that hole, you know. And evidently, the Germans knew about that hole. They knew that there was an emplacement and would be a good place for a mortar, so they started shooting mortars at us, because artillery shells, they just hit and go. They ricochet, you know. The artillery shelling, when it comes in, not being time fire, when they hit the ground, they ricochet, they go up. So you lay on the ground, you're safe. But these were mortars. And one day, we were in the hole, and I heard a clatter like tanks. And I was kind of curious in the war. I wasn't afraid. I don't know why I had no fear. Maybe I was not a little bit insane, but I had no fear. And I heard a clatter like a big tank coming towards us, and I crawled up the ramp to see what was going on. And I saw this big old U.S. tank with blacks in it. And it got hit. When I saw it, it got hit by a German 88. And when it hit it, it must have been a 2 or 3 stage blast, because I could see about 3 balls of fire, and nothing but a big old ball of fire in front of the tank. And when that cleared off, the turret opens up, and one black just opens and falls dead, hanging there. I went back in the hole. I said, that's bad enough. I don't see any more. They were all dead, I guess, inside. So I went back into the hole, and then they were starting to zero on us with a mortar. And we had a projectile. We heard one of the projectiles hit on one side of the hole, about maybe 20 feet away. It went thump. You can tell the difference between a mortar shell, because it sounds deep. And boom. And then another one fell to the other side, boom. And one of the guys said, they're going to hit us. They're aiming at us, you know. So we were waiting for the third shell, and everybody in there didn't know where to go, just like rats run from one corner to another, trying to get the right place. There was no right place. If one shell would have hit there, it would have killed all of us. So I just huddled up in one corner, and I just got myself together, and the third shot was a little bit to the west side, say. And the other one fell further away, so they missed it. They missed us. So that was a miracle.
And then as you went through Europe, you went until you met up with the Russians, huh?
Yeah. another incident that we had was very famous. Was we were stopped for a while, and we were just in front of close to a little town. I don't remember the name of the German town, but the captain said that little town, the town is surrendering, but I'm going to send 5 or 6 jeeps to draw fire, see if there's anybody there before we move in. And I was one of the crews that went on a jeep, and we took off. And now Sergeant Gusney was in the front seat of the jeep, and I was behind him. And he when we left them, he picked up a machine gun, a 30 caliber heavy weapon machine gun, which usually takes 2 people to run it. You can't do it by yourself. And somebody laughed at him and said, "What are you going to do? You're going to be Machine Gun Kelly?" And you're making fun of the guy. But on the jeep, you can set it on a tripod, but on the ground you can't. The machine gun, when you're firing, one guy is feeding the belt. By yourself, you can't use it. You can't run it. So anyway, we went. There's about 5 or 6 jeeps, and I was about on the 4th jeep. And so we were approaching this little town when, boom, the first jeep got hit, and everybody jumped off the jeeps and took cover, to the side of the road. And it was some snipers that were left behind. Somebody that was left behind to hold us for the purpose of, I don't know what their purpose was, either to get more time to get away from there. But they had white flags sticking out there. See, they were supposed to surrender, and they were firing at us. They had machine guns, and they swept. I was laying on the gutter of that road, and I had machine gun fire going on my back and throwing dirt on me, but I wasn't going to stick my head up there. Well, it was about 2 o'clock in the evening, and the sun was out. It was kind of a sunny day, and it was starting to get hot. And down below, there was like a little valley. There was a little stream that ran through there, and suddenly we saw 3 guys running for the ditch. There was a little stream, it must have been a little, I don't know what you call it, a little stream of water running through there. It wasn't a river, it was just a little, what do you call a little?
Rivulet, they call it, yeah.
Well, anyway, there was water in there, there's trees, you could see there was trees. They were running for that little place, and they got hit, they got killed. And Sergeant Gusney was right on my right here, and he got tired and exhausted, and he couldn't take it anymore, laying down there and doing nothing. He says, I'm gonna get up and shoot this and use a machine gun, he said. And somebody said, "You can't do that by yourself, Gusney." Because I'm gonna try it. When I get up, he says, when I get up there, you guys fire. Everybody fire. Fire at who? You couldn't see nobody. Because we were down there was a little base up high, a little mountain. So the moment he gets up on his haunches, they got him, bang, right next to me. He fell back, and dead as a dead doornail. And that was the end of him. And so nobody would stick up their head, because the moment you did, they would get knocked out. So we had a Jeep driver, our Jeep driver, one of my best friends, he was a little short guy, and we called him the Little Swede. He said, I'm gonna crawl I'm going to crawl to my Jeep, he says, in a hurry, and get in it and see if I can turn it around. And you know, he had the guts to do that. He crawled to that doggone Jeep, started, they had no doors, you know, them Jeeps, they're open. They had no doors. Started the Jeep and jumped in it, and like that, he took off in it and got help. He saved our lives, a lot of us, because he went back and told him where we were and what happened. So they called artillery to destroy the little town. And when they started hitting that town, where you could hear children crying, and because they catch on fire, you know, they must have been hitting a bunch of kids or somewhere in the school or something. But you could hear the wailing and the crying of children and everything. It's a horrible thing to hear. We didn't see it because we didn't go in. We went back. So those are the things about the wars, you know. There's no mercy. And usually the civilian people are the ones that take the rap, you know. Children and women and old people.
Yeah.
It's better to be in uniform. At least you're a soldier. Because a lot of civilians get knocked out, killed and mashed and everything else. So it was kind of a long trail. We took several towns. When we got down to a place, town by Fulda, Fulda was a rich man's town. We took that over, and that surrendered peacefully. They had flags. They left town. Everybody was moved out of town. When we went down there, we got in there. Most would be looking for souvenirs, and since it was a rich man's town, why, I went downstairs and I found a big book, the Mein Kampf book, and he must have been an officer that lived in that building, because he was a real Nazi guy. He must have been an officer. Who it was, I can't tell, but it was a beautiful Mein Kampf book with silk dividers between it. And I said, well, this book, I'm going to take it home and for a souvenir, and it'll probably be worth a lot of money in years. So I come upstairs and I said, hey guys, look what I found down there. Oh yeah, they said, look what Liz, that's what they call me, Liz, for Lizarraga, Liz. Look what he found, and they got the darn book and tore it up to pieces. Tore all the pages to pieces.
So much for your souvenir, huh?
Souvenir. That was the end of that souvenir I was going to bring over. So as we went along, we ran into the Blue Danube. And I remember that the Blue Danube was not blue, it was dirty because it had rained a lot of storm water in it. It was muddy water. But nevertheless, we had to cross it, and there was no bridge. So the engineers rigged up a raft and moved us across the Blue Danube in a narrow place where there was more current, but it was a narrower place. They made it on some pontoon things and put a raft and moved us little by little. And we actually took over that very important town, which is Regensburg. It's right across the Blue Danube. We took that town, and I've been trying to tell some of the people here in Tempe about the sister city of Tempe. The Regensburg was taken by the 71st Division, the 5th Regiment. Regensburg it's a sister city of Tempe. I think it still is. Mm-hmm. So it was an interesting thing. We kept on pushing the enemy and kept on pushing till we got into Bavaria. Bavaria is in Austria. And the sad thing about it was, as we were going in there, we ran into a concentration camp by the name of Lager. And there was a sight to see, because when we approached the thing, before we got to the fence, there was stacks of bodies, bones, heaps of bodies, dead bodies, just skeletons. And being in a cold country like that, there's no stench and no flies. That's one good thing about that, because if they had been in a place with flies like here, man alive, it would be a terrible stench and flies. But there was nothing like that. It was just a heap of bones. And what happened was, in the concentration camp, the ones that were killed or died, they just threw them out. They wouldn't bury them. We got in that camp, and it was a sad situation to see, because the men that were in there, mostly men, they walked around like they didn't care. They were so far gone, like dead bodies walking around, the dead walking around. They did not look at you and say you're an American soldier or what. They didn't care about anything. I guess maybe their mind was already shot, where they couldn't reason or think. They were so mistreated and so hungry that they were about dead bodies. But that division, the Red Circle Division, the 71st Division, was credited like, it was named like the Freedom Division. I think I was in one of the camps that were liberated, but I think there was 3 camps liberated by the 71st Division. There were a lot of camps. Hitler had camps all over the country, all over Europe, from Poland to Austria, to Czechoslovakia, to everywhere.
And so there was no emotion from the people that you liberated?
Huh?
There was no emotion from the people that you liberated?
They haven't seen any people?
Yeah, was there any emotion? What was their response? You mentioned some people just walking around in a daze.
You mean the dead people in the camp?
Yeah, the people in the camp.
Like I say, they first of all, there was in a camp like that, they had people from all over the countries, and English, speech was useless. They were so maltreated and hungry and close to death that they wouldn't talk. They were just living matter. And that was a time that they were probably dying of hunger, because Germany, even though they were still firing, they had no food. In Germany, when we got in there you couldn't see any dogs or cats or horses. The only thing you would see would be like bulls, the ox that they had to work with. But they must have eaten most of the animals. Because I was one time up in Augsburg. We were in what they call they don't call them condominium, but it's like a condominium. It's 2 or 3 floors. I was up on the 3rd floor in a little room, and I laid all my canvas, my tent and everything on the bed to rest, and I could smell something dead, and I looked around, and there was a little paper bag with the head of a cat and the feet. They consumed the rest of it, and it must have been their pet, if a woman or a man
Yeah.
and they had to eat the cat. Yeah.
Did you, were you part of the group that met up with the Russians?
Huh?
Did you ever meet up with the Russians?
Yeah, we met the Russians in Steyr, Austria. The division that we were tracking, he went up to the point of where they couldn't go anymore because the Russians were shooting at them too. So they decided to surrender to the American Army. And they surrendered to the American Army. And one point there, as I don't see why or how I got there, but I was told to stand guard in this. There was a wood stake driven in there to stay there and to receive the enemy troops coming in, and a place where they would dump all their equipment, machine guns and whatever they had. I don't remember why they sent me one man to watch this, and it happened to be me. I stood there, and then a big, they use huge trucks for the men, you know, about 8 feet high, way up. And here I am, 20 years old there with an M1 rifle, waiting for them to come in. And when the first one came in, they started hollering, "Comrade, comrade, comrade, cigarettes!" They wanted cigarettes. "Cigarette, comrade. Haben Sie cigarette?" No, just dump your gear over there where that stake is, in English. And they start throwing their stuff there. And that truck, after throw the stuff in, goes in, another one truck came in. The whole army was coming through there, and I was watching it like I was a big general. And I think back at that point, I say, why did they do that? You would say that there would be a commanding officer in there waiting for them, you know. They put a regular soldier.
Well, they just felt like it was.
I was just like a marker.
Yeah.
Like a marker. I couldn't do nothing to them. They had already surrendered. But they had an agreement to dump their gear, all their equipment or whatever they had in a place that there was a stake there. And when they arrived, I said, dump your gear over there. And they threw their rifles and machine guns and stuff like that. When it was cleaned up, continue forward, and another truck come in and stop and throw the stuff in there. And they were received in town at a certain place, I don't know where, but they were screened, you know. They were screened and make sure they had no weapons or nothing like that. And no, the first ones that came in were all wounded. The first trucks that came in, all guys were wounded, bandaged up and all that, you know. And that's the way it was. They surrendered. They surrendered to me, I guess. A little ant there in the middle of nowhere.
So how long were you in Germany after the war?
I was there almost a year.
So you were there until 1946?
Yeah. I came back in 46.
Okay, I am running out of recording stuff here.
Yeah.
So what was Germany like when the war ended?
Well, after we found those, we went through those concentration camps and they surrendered. To top it all, I forgot to say that I think that our division was the last division to fire the last shot in the war. Yeah, they surrendered to us, like I said, and then an important time was another thing that happened to me during that time after the war. I was going to be sent home because I had points, the point system they called it. And I had points because I had a child here, and they were going to be sending me home before a lot of others. So they moved me from the 5th Regiment to the 14th Regiment. The 14th Regiment was going to come home. And that was the purpose of transferring me to that, from the 5th Regiment to the 14th Regiment. So we got ready to come home, and we had all our gear checked in and everything. And so the captain comes in and says, there's one mission that they want you guys in the 14th Regiment. This is a secret mission that has to be done, and you are the 14th Regiment that is selected to go and do this. It was a secret mission we knew nothing about. So that was it. So they shipped us to Augsburg, and they started giving us all kinds of gas masks and equipping us again with overcoats and stuff like that for the winter. And we asked one another, where are we going? We don't know. What are we going to do? We don't know. It's a secret mission. So it was kind of mysterious and scary thing. They loaded us on a train in Augsburg, and the train started out, no windows or doors in the darn. It was colder than, very cold. And the little train kept going north, kept going north, kept going somewhere. All we could see was snow and more snow and more snow. That happened for about 2 nights in that damn boxcars, and finally the train stops in the middle of nowhere. No towns, no nothing, just snow and apple trees you could see. I don't know where it's at yet. So the train stops at a little station. We unloaded off the train, and they loaded us on a 2.5-ton trucks and took us to a camp, an evacuated camp. There was actually, it must have been an Air Corps field or something. There was a lot of round, what do they call them, huts, hangars.
Lots of huts.
There's a lot of hangars, and when we got in there, they opened the gate. It was a big gate. They opened up the gate. We went in, and they closed the gate. And then they took us into these buildings, and they had already marked squares for each soldier to be numbered. So when we got in there, then the secret was opened. We are in a certain place, and our mission is to remove 1,500 or something in that category, to remove them from there because they are actually traitors to Russia, and Russia wants them alive. That was an agreement made by President Roosevelt and Stalin, the Russian dictators at that time. They had what they called it a White House conference in the South somewhere, and Russia and Roosevelt came to that agreement. Russia wanted all the traitors that left Russia when the Germans invaded Russia. He wanted them alive. So these people would rather die than go back. And they told us they were armed. And the way we were to operate was, they had those barracks where they were in, and they told us the camp will be surrounded with tanks, and we would hit them around 5 o'clock in the morning when they were still in bed, probably a lot of them. And they had a bell out in the camp to wake everybody up. So there was one man that's supposed to go and get that guy before he rang the bell. Now, I was headed a billy club and a gas mask. There would be 2 or 3 guys go into the barracks, and on each end of the barrack, the entrance and the rear, there would be a soldier with tear gas bombs. In case that we had trouble, they would throw a bomb of gas and you had a gas mask. But our job was to get these people out within 5 minutes at the most. And they weren't supposed to get nothing but their shoes and their clothes, and make sure they had no knives or nothing. So we went in there with our clubs, hitting they were sleeping in bunk beds, you know, like armies. And we went in there, get up, get up, get up, and talking in English.
I think we're out of.
Huh?
So let's start where. Start back a couple of minutes and let's move forward.
Start where?
Start when you wanted to make sure no one would ring the bell, and then move forward from there. You wanted to make sure no one knew that you were coming.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, okay. At a secret mission, yeah. Yeah, they didn't know we were going to hit them by surprise. So like I say, we were unloaded and taken to this barracks and assigned. We were all assigned to a barrack and what to do. 5 minutes. In 5 minutes, all they could put the clothes on and the shoes and outside. And when we went into the barracks, why, of course, we hit the beds with a club, you know, and hollered in English, get up, let's go, get up. And they woke up while they were asleep. It was a nightmare for them. They didn't know what, and then in speaking in English, they didn't know what was happening. Out, let's go, and get about. We had no problem. No problem, we got him out. Now, as we were standing outside there, we had a line of men, old and young, and we had them lined up, and they were loading it in a box cars.
Yeah.
Loading them in box cars, so the line was moving very slow. As I was standing there close to one of those Russian young men, he looks at me and sad and goes like this. He knew that when he was going to get to Russia in that boxcar, they would machine gun him, you know, make a trench and. So it was kind of a very sad situation, but that's the way the war goes, you know, and all that kind of stuff. The secret mission was to get him out alive, and I heard that some guys that were they didn't want to go, and they would see nails sticking in the boxcar, nails. They would hit themselves on the nail with the head, try to kill themselves. And a lot of them killed themselves. But there was a sad situation because the operation was not like it was mentioned. I thought maybe we would have some action. I thought maybe we would have some action against us, you know. No. We hit them when they were asleep. And going in there, raising hell with them, and hitting the barracks with a billy club. They got up, they didn't know what the heck was going on. Out. So they were loaded on, supposedly on this train, and taken to Russia. There was nothing, there was no conflict there was nothing. And after I got here, we never knew nothing more about it. When I got here, I was going to one of these meetings, group, 71st Division meeting, reunion, and I asked them about the secret mission, and nobody knew about it. Nobody knew about it. Finally, a historian heard of my question, and he's the one that told me what was on. It was a secret mission, and it was not in the Army books or nothing. But it's recorded through history, but it's never mentioned. It's never mentioned to the public, never on the paper or nothing. Even I had trouble finding out what. And the operation of that secret mission operation's name was Keyhole. Mission Keyhole. That was it. But it's strange how things happen, and they're not really a casualty of the United States Army. It's something that belongs to Russia. And I assume, as I understand, that Russia had no mercy on traitors, They were considered traitors. There's people that don't want to fight, they don't want to have a war, they just go. Well, they're considered traitors because when Germany went into Russia, it was a terrible sight, supposedly. The Germans were killing kids, women, children, everybody, massacring. So when the cold winter came and they froze, the German army froze, their motorcycles wouldn't run, they froze to death. The Russians took over, and they did the same thing. They just massacred down the Germans. And when I was there, they were deadly scared of the Russians. But it happened. Mm-hmm. So finally, the Russians were our allies.
And how did you feel about it at the time?
Well, after I found out about that those people were just evading the war, I felt sad because that was not a brave movement. That was not a brave thing to talk about. It is not a brave thing that you would say, well, you're face to face with an enemy. You are getting a person that's asleep, but that's the rule, That's the command that you have to go do it, and you do it. Not that you want to. We didn't even know at the beginning what it was in. I found out here later what it was all about.
And so what happened after that mission?
Well, after that mission, we got back and they got us ready and to come home. And another thing, at the end of that, when I was going to come home, I was at Le Havre. Le Havre is the name of that place. L-E-H-A-V-R-E, Le Havre. And they told me that if I wanted to fly over or wait for a boat, and I had been on planes before, those little paratroop, twin-engine planes. And I started thinking, well, that plane, if it falls in the ocean, you got to be picked up by a ship. I'd rather be on a ship.
Yeah.
So I told him I'd rather wait for a ship, which I did. And at that time, trying to move troops over here, they made a lot of ships that were cargo ships. They turned them into troop ships. It was empty, actually. Instead of supplies, they put beds in there for GIs to sleep in a kitchen, and so. And I happened to come into one of those cargo boats, and it had a limit of 1,000 men, and it had 1,500 men. It was overloaded. I didn't know anything about it, and we got in it, came over, and as we left Le Havre, about 3 days, we hit a storm, like a hurricane, and that's more frightful than a war. That boat would go over the waves. They were so large, it went over the top of the wave like a mountain, and the back end of it would go up in the air, and you could hear the propellers, and then go the other way. So the miraculous thing about that trip was both going over and over, coming over, or going either which way. Miraculously, I never had any
seasickness.
Yeah. I never had a bad stomach. I never got seasick, going over or coming back. And most of the soldiers in it were all sick, throwing up everywhere. So after going over the hump forward, they turned it sideways, and there was about, I don't know what to tell you, but at one time it went over on the side, like one-sided. I thought it was going to flip over completely, but it didn't. It never fell over or nothing. But we made it home. But it was terrifying. It was more scary than the war. I don't know if you've been on a boat like that or not.
I was on destroyers. There were even smaller ships in typhoons. Yes. That's what I had nightmares about.
Yeah.
So, when the war was over, Germany was just totally destroyed?
Yeah, totally destroyed. Hitler, yeah, it was totally destroyed. Hitler shot himself. His girlfriend, I forget her name.
Eva Braun.
Yeah. She took poison, and most of those, I got a book there on some of those criminals that were, and talking about Nuremberg. I was in Nuremberg right after the war, where they were shooting the criminals. They were shooting them, you know. And oftentimes they come over and ask me, "You want to go to the shooting today, to the firing squad?" No, I says, I don't feel like shooting anybody, especially after the war's over with.
Yeah.
Several times I was called in to see volunteers, you know. But it's always volunteers to the fire squad. I was there when there were the trials of the Nazis in Nuremberg.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you were there, what, up until 1946 sometime?
Yeah, 46.
What'd you think about that whole thing?
What do I think about it?
What did you think about those trials?
Those trials? Well, I'm glad it happened because they deserved a trial, but they knew that they couldn't win. I mean, they would be hung or whatever, shot. But they had to have a trial and call them guilty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you went and you saw that destruction. The people were obviously they were starving and scared.
I was too young, I guess, to be scared, or I had suffered so much in the Depression time here that actually that was, as long as I was eating, I guess I was okay.
So you came back from the war. What was Arizona like when you came?
Oh, man. It was really something, living for 2 years away from a house, and then after the war coming down, we landed in Maine, in that Victory ship, Smith Victory. We landed in Maine, and we got off the boat. We got on a train. We came through Pennsylvania, Vermont, through those cities up there to by train, way down to. Let's see, where did we get on the bus? We came by train to Texas, I think. In Texas, we got been civilians again, giving our discharge papers and everything, and they put us on a bus. And I came on a bus, and I got in Tolleson. Then my family was not here in Tempe; they were in West Phoenix. And it was sure a feeling that it's really, really something weird. The bus stops in Tolleson about 7 o'clock in the morning, and I get off, just one person, me. I get off with my barracks bag and everything. And I stood there looking. The bus takes off. I didn't want to stay there. I want to go back. I felt like going back into the army. I don't want to stay here. Then I kind of reflect a bit, because I know the place. But it was something, it's very hard to take a journey like that. Go into much action of things and then coming back. Yeah. So I got myself together, and I called a taxi. There's a taxi there. I guess I told him to take me to some place, and he took me to this ranch where my wife was. And boy, was I happy to see them. Yeah, that's the way it was. Then from there we moved over here to Tempe again. And I've been here for 72 or 3 or 5 years. The same place. Not the same house, but the same area. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, how did you get back into civilian life?
Well, into civilian life, it wasn't hard to get back into it because it was still farm. There were still farmlands here. When I got back, there were still farms like I had left it. So it was not hard to get back to in the same boots, Mm-hmm. I started to work for the same company, B&M Farms. I came over here and I was living here, and I was working in baseline for B&M Farms. I was driving a Caterpillar tractor at night, and so that's the way I got back here in place. And my wife had bought this acre here, and it was bare, and I found a little cottage, a frame of a cottage on Alma and Apache Boulevard. I paid $200 for it, and I dragged it over here with a couple of horses, and we rented. I rented 4 wheels, and we put it on wheels, and this guy had a couple of horses, and he put it in here with a couple of team of horses. Mm-hmm. At university, that was a lane at that time. It was a dirt lane. It was actually at one time, university area was they used to call it transmission. There was a railroad coming from Mesa to Tempe through there, but they tore it apart, and you could tell it was at one time a railroad track through there. And that's the way we came in with my little cottage, and we set it here. And we started to live right in here. I started fixing it up and working, and finally I decided to go to college. I had a chance to take 2 years of college training. At first that wasn't vocational training, and then they did away vocational, and they said they give us a couple of regular college courses, whoever made the test. I took the test and I passed it, and I went to college here in Tempe. At that time it was a college, it wasn't a university. It was Tempe College. It was a agricultural college, and there I went through the tests with the regulars from high school. I had no high school, but I managed to pass. I passed it with 1 or 2 points, and I made it. And so I took a lot of building and construction is the curriculum, and building and construction consists of mostly everything: electricity, painting, plumbing, blocklaying, everything. So it turned out pretty good. I enjoyed it. I worked for Ellison and Sons in Chandler welding. When I got out of there, I welded for them, and I fixed out my house and everything else, and lived very happy till my wife died. That's alone again. But I'm not like I used to be. You know, I wasn't really. When I was an orphan, it was terrible. Yeah, that's the way it was. So there's landmarks like the lakes. I'll never forget them because that's the place of marriage. Mm-hmm. And I go to Superior. I remember where I used to work there. Everywhere I go, I see remembrances that I've been in. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad I'm here so far. Mm-hmm. At 95.
Do you think you had a good life? You think you had a good life?
Yeah. Well, life has been always a struggle, you know. Mm-hmm. But I'm a person that can shrug off a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. I've been through a lot of things. Not only me, you too, I guess. But you have to shrug them off. Because if you don't, you probably end up shooting somebody or killing somebody. Yeah.
Well, I've enjoyed our conversation.
I hope you did.
Yeah.
I didn't get all of it because it would take a long time to take every unit, every piece by piece, you know. Mm-hmm.